Okay, great. So, hi guys, welcome to the Unreal Game Development Open Day. I'm your host Yash. I'm a Vertex graduate and also a content creator, and I'll be hosting the event today with our very own John. Um, John, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
So, first up, John, it's great to have you here. And for anyone joining us for the first time, you have worked extensively in Unreal across, real-time production, education, and today we are planning to go a level deeper on how Unreal is actually used, learned, and mastered. So, I do have quite a few questions for you. And guys, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. I highly encourage you to ask as many questions as possible because there is no such thing as a silly question. The whole point of these sorts of events is for you guys to learn and interact. So
I
that
always like to say that the only stupid question is the one that you didn't ask.
exactly. That's the correct way to think about it. So um let's get started. So John, for anyone who is meeting you for the first time, how would you explain what Unreal Engine really is? And is it just beyond just a game engine?
I would say I would call it a dream machine, really. It Unreal Engine, the thing that's beautiful about it is that it can be whatever you need it to be, and I do mean that in all seriousness. I was first introduced to it back in 2003 by my uncle. It was back when it was Unreal version 2.0. Man, it was rough back then, but it was definitely one of the coolest things I'd ever seen at that point. But how far it's come along now, I mean, there are industries that you're used to hearing about it in, obviously games, because it's a game engine first, but virtual production and film and things like that. I'm sure people have heard about VR and simulation, but some of the things that I've personally used Unreal for, that I have projects that I've worked on, I would just to give a quick example of that. There was a project back when I was working for Walmart, and what I did for Walmart was a lot on their uh, technical side stuff, actually using Unreal Engine. Believe it or not, if anybody here shops at Walmart, if you've ever been inside of a Walmart store, that store layout was originally designed inside of Unreal Engine. They've been using it since Unreal Engine version 3 for well over 15 years to design store layouts, use VR headsets to walk through it. All kinds of things that it's for. I really like to say that, it can be used for pretty much anything that you can imagine.
That is very cool to know. The whole Walmart layout being built on Unreal Engine. It is truly flexible because, and you can also see the differences in all the versions because now I have not used Unreal 2.0, but I had used Unreal when it was Unreal version 4 and coming to the one of the latest 5.0 or 5 point something. I'm
Mhm.
quite sure I've lost track of the numbers, but you can still see the difference in it, including I think one of the things that I personally like, which is slightly controversial, I guess, is Lumen. I am a big fan of Lumen, so
So am
uh,
I. I mean, I hate the idea that it's considered controversial. And I'll tell you the truth. It's only considered controversial to people who don't know how to use it properly. It can be very powerful, very beautiful, but it if you know how to use it correctly, it is also very performant.
yeah, exactly. Like it depends on um like what capacity are you using it, what context are you using it? Because I can understand that there's like depending on your project, it can vary. Okay, we already have Akma. I'm sorry if I'm not getting your name correctly. Why is it controversial? Lumen, I'm gonna let you answer that.
Yes, yes. So the reason why Lumen is controversial is because it adds a whole new level of overhead. It's not really good on older hardware. So if you're using like really old hardware, like out of the box, it's not that great. But I can tell you, I have gotten Lumen running wonderfully on NVIDIA 1060s. So even going back to the 10 series, it's still can be performant. The reason why it's controversial is because a lot of devs would jump into it and they wouldn't actually know how to use it properly because they didn't know all the things that have to work together for it. So it like if you go into an Unreal project and you're trying to run it on a potato machine, having Lumen turned on in a heavy scene can bring your frame rate down to say like 30 FPS. Turning it off and going back to baked lighting would bump that up to 60 FPS. So it's like you get a lot of extra performance out of not using it. But the thing is, if you use it correctly, you can still hit that 60 FPS. It's just that most people were not going in and using it correctly because there's a lot of things with Lumen that have to work together. For one, Lumen and Nanite are kind of a package deal.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing that a lot of people don't realize. Everybody's like, "Oh no, turn off Lumen because it's, bad performance," or "Don't use Nanite because it's bad performance." It's like, well, if you use them together, then magically they start to perform really well. But also, uh, and I'm not gonna praise, I'm not gonna like get on my knees and worship Epic and everything that, out of the box because there are some things with Lumen out of the box that are not tuned for performance. So you do actually have to go in and tune a couple of things. There are a couple of really good C variables that you can use, a couple of settings that you can change, and it still looks just as good as if you had them on, but you get better performance out of it. That is, we'll go ahead and we'll let Unreal take that hit. That is their fault that out of the box it does need a little bit of tuning, but it's not a lot of tuning that it needs. And, once you know what to tune, it's you go in, you start a new project, and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn this to this, I'm going to turn this to this, I'm going to turn this to this, and then, suddenly it's working nicely.
Yeah. Oh, I see a few more messages coming in. Uh,
Uh,
what
what,
what math knowledge and disciplines is required for Unreal Engine game dev? Is there a recommended refresher track?
uh, math, um, a little bit of algebra, a little bit of geometry, doesn't hurt. That's for sure. You don't need like crazy, algorithm math. You don't need crazy trig and calculus. That kind of math you really only need when you're trying to get into the actual like rendering level stuff. So I know for like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, he was like, "Oh, you want to get into game development, programming, you got to be an expert at calculus and stuff like that." Well, that was when people were trying to build their own game engines because that all comes in with rendering. You're talking about like 3D math when it comes to rendering. But when you're using something like Unreal and you're using, the built-in rendering system that's already there, then uh, if you know a little bit of algebra, you're pretty good. Even if you don't, even if you're not good at math, I know a lot of people who are not good at math and can still do some great stuff, game development wise, with Unreal. But I would say the one piece of math that would be the most useful is just understanding how to use the dot product equation. So that's something you can go look up. Dot product is DOT product. You can look that up. It's not too terribly difficult to understand, but that's probably the biggest thing math-wise that's most complex that I tend to run into very often. The rest of it's just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, really.
The,
And
oh,
I see
yeah,
another question in here
yeah.
too. That's-
Will Unreal at any point be able to use dual video cards outside of path tracing and end display?
I don't have an answer for that. That is a question for the architecture team, but one I've actually got a friend who is on the architecture team that I can ask him and get back to you on that one. I'll ask Steven about it.
Uh, moving on. So what originally pulled you towards Unreal Engine over other engines? Because from my personal experience, I've seen majority of the time people usually go Unreal Engine or Unity, at least from the people I know.
Probably there's probably definitely a bias from a 2003. I was 18 at the time, and my uncle showed me Unreal version 2, which he wasn't supposed to. That was technically breaking an NDA, but I've talked to Tim Sweeney about it, and he's cool about it now, and he's actually glad that, my uncle showed it to me. But so there's probably some bias with that. But I have gone and I've tried some other ones. I've worked with other proprietary engines at studios in the early 2000s and things like that. And when Unity finally became available for Windows, I did jump onto that and try it out. But I kept going back to Unreal whenever I could because I just, I felt ingrained in that system. And then when Unreal Engine 4 came out, or we'll call it, so Rocket Engine was what they called the alpha and the beta for UE4. And I was lucky enough to be included in the alpha testing for it. And starting with what they were doing with Unreal Engine 4 in Rocket Engine, it just made so much more sense than any other engine out there. And I'd tried Unity. I've built a couple of things with like RPG Maker back in the day, stuff like that. But I've always been able to accomplish more quickly with Unreal than anything else. And maybe it's because I've worked with it more, but I have worked with Unity quite a bit. But on the subject of the Unity Unreal thing, one of the things that really pulled me to Unreal side versus Unity is just the fact that I was able to accomplish things accomplish more quicker in Unreal, and I was able to teach people how to accomplish more quicker in Unreal. And I have an actual tangible example for that. So, when I was working for JB Hunt Transport, like 12 years ago or something like that. I don't even know what year it is now. 2026? Okay, yeah, about 12-ish, 11-ish years ago. And I was basically heading up their VR team because we were doing a lot of like VR simulation, VR training. We were doing VR marketing pieces. Like we would build little games that we would take to truck shows so that we could get the kids in playing the games, and then we would have our salespeople talking to the parents. So it was a whole marketing scheme going on there with that. But one of the things there was we built uh, this one experience in Unity because my manager was like a big fan of Unity. It's like, okay, we'll do it in Unity. And it took us 12 weeks to put together this little vertical slice. And it was okay, but it was not great. The gameplay was not that great. The graphics were not that great. And we had some struggles and some things we couldn't do. And then uh, it came around. Unity called us up, and they're like, "Okay, well, we gave you the extended trial, 12 weeks instead of 30 days, um, but now you have to pay for it." Well, JB Hunt, I don't know if you guys have ever seen their trucks on the road. They're a trucking and logistic company. They're a pretty big company. They are one of the one of the richest companies in the country. But it's because they were an enterprise company, and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars a year in revenue. Unity was like, okay, so you're gonna have to pay for it, and for these three seats, because they were only going to give us three seats for this price, it's going to be $500,000 a year. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
like, oh, and we could not get that approved in the budget. So I'm like, I convinced my manager. It's like, hey, let's try Unreal. Like seriously, just do it. I will teach the team. And so we had a team of it was basically me and then four other people. And like, okay, let's try this in Unreal. We're going to rebuild it from scratch. So what took us 12 weeks to do in Unity that was just kind of okay. In 3 weeks, I was able to teach my team of four other people how to use Unreal, how to use PBR, how to use Blueprint, how to use all of that, and completely recreate the what we created in Unity at like 10x the quality, 10x the performance, all of that in 3 weeks. 3 weeks versus 12 weeks, and not only did we not have to pay for it, but they kind of like gave us a mega grant for that. So they paid us. So there was that. But besides the cost, if you were to take the cost out of it, the important lesson there is that we were just able to do more faster and at much higher quality. And I was able to teach people on the job how to work with it. And by the end of that 3 weeks, they were like, even though one of the guys had been working with Unity for like 2 years, at the end of 3 weeks, he was like, I can do so much more in Unreal than I ever could with Unity. So,
I mean, that is a very cool story. I see we are getting a few more messages. So there's also, guys, just as a side note, obviously I'm trying to balance between getting all your questions answered and also like making sure that we give you the best experience. John also has like a very cool demo, that he's going to show us. So in case I don't, immediately respond to your question, please hold on. We'll make sure that we'll cover all your questions. Um, okay, going back here, I can see this is related to the boot camp. So the first question is, what does a realistic first shipped Unreal project look like for a beginner with limited weekly hours?
what does what does a first Unreal project look like for a beginner?
Yeah, I
Or
would believe. I realized that this question has been sent to me personally. If I just send it to you here, there you go.
oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, if whoever did that question could put it in there. So I'm a very visual person and
Yeah,
I'm a reader too. So like I like to I like to
yeah. I
read.
just shared both the questions with you.
Okay. There we go. Okay, what does a realistic first shipped Unreal project look like for a beginner with limited weekly hours? Depends upon what you mean for shipped, but so I've done a lot of. So here's the example that I'll use, because we don't have like a defined thing there. So I've done a lot of like 8 week long game dev boot camps with Unreal and brought people in that have never opened Unreal in their lives. It was their first time opening it. And we would have 3 hour instruction, lecture per week, and then 2 hours of lab time per week, and then they would have like, however much time that they would have to outside of that to actually work on it. So with that, and with some of them that only had like 3 hours of personal time a week outside of class time to work on it, I have seen in those 8 weeks, I've seen students come up with a pretty decent little playable vertical slice of a basketball game. I've seen like a Resident Evil style. Yeah, we had one that was called she called it Hotel Motel Holiday Inn. That was it was a survival horror in a hotel. 8 weeks, never used Unreal before that. I've seen little shooters. I've seen all kinds of things. It's once you know the main interface and you know how to get around in Unreal, then you're able to do a lot of stuff really quickly. And once you can wrap your mind around Blueprint, you can see how far you can go in Blueprint. Now, one of the reasons why they were able to do that in my class is because of the specific way that I teach Blueprint, which is um, I don't do, hand-holding, walkthrough, step-by-step tutorials so much as I show you how to build the Lego pieces and then show you how to put those Lego pieces together in like, two or three different combinations, and then, challenge you to put those Lego pieces together in different combinations. And, at the end of, several weeks, you end up with a whole library of Lego pieces that you know how to build, and then you just put those Lego pieces together in whatever way that you need to. An example, we've actually got a class going on right now that at Vertex is part of the term four, where you get all the students together that have done their different disciplines, put them in a group, and I like to call it Game Studio Simulator for fun. But basically, that's what it is. It's your group project, group game project. And, at the beginning, you're going through ideas and everything. And what tends to happen is, they'll come up with the students will come up with ideas for like 10 different mechanics. And they're like, we got 10 different mechanics. And, it's like, we're not going to have enough time to build all 10 different mechanics. And that's when, slow them down. It's like, no, you actually only have two different mechanics. One of them is used in seven different ways, and the second one's used in three different ways. So it's learning how to break it down to those pieces there so that you recognize that, oh, these seven different mechanics are actually the same mechanic. We're just using different variable names or different static meshes or, different animation styles or whatever.
I mean, just to add on to that from a student's perspective, now I have done the game art course, but I did have friends who were in the game dev course. I could just say that you can do a lot even if you have never touched Unreal Engine, as long as you put in the work and as long as you ask all your questions, because that's how I learned my stuff for Unreal Engine, and so did my friends. We just get in there and start building, and a lot of our stuff was broken, but that's where you
Yeah.
go ask the mentor that, hey, I have this broken piece of, blueprint. How do I fix it? And also, now I am quite sure this is probably already well understood, but just because I did have a friend who thought that they are going to have to do everything from scratch, like build the props in Maya, texture it, render it, then bring it to Unreal, then do the blueprint. I don't think that's how it's going to happen in this course. It's more like you use your assets because you're going to be here for a
Yes.
long time if you,
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know,
to specify on that. So it starts with this 6 week boot camp, which is getting it the whole purpose of it is to actually build some kind of prototype. Now it focuses more on the actual game development side of it. So you're not going to have time to model your own stuff and all of that. So it's going to be um, using things that are available to you and sometimes just using rough stuff to get it to that prototype playable point. Um, but so there's the focus there. But then the larger one, the larger game dev one that you go into after the boot camp, that one, there's more time to model your own stuff, do some texturing and all of that. But, realistically, if your focus is, on development, gameplay, things like that, then it's okay to use stuff from the
yeah.
marketplace or to use stuff from like friends and teammates and it's because in a real studio, it's not usually not one person doing the same thing or doing everything. I mean, it's usually people have their disciplines and they have to work together as a team.
And just one last thing before we move on to the next question is it's also some of it is on how you scope and what sort of goals are you setting for yourself. Like for example, for me, when I first started, I did get quite carried away. I was quite hyped up about like building my first prop. So for me, one of the games I do like is Warhammer Age of Sigmar. I know you've worked on that before. I showed my mentor this really cool prop, and I was like, I want to build this sort of a hero prop. I want to do this, and he was like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's start with something simple first. Let's start with the table first, and then you can go make like the hero prop that you want, which is like a big sword or like a hammer or something that's more complex. Like, so just setting a slightly more realistic goal. There's no harm in wanting to create something great, bigger and fancier, but having your foundations correct and then moving on from there does help a lot. Uh, I see the next question is how far can blueprints realistically take a solo developer before C++ becomes necessary?
That is actually a really good question. It'll take you as far as you want. You don't ever have to get into C++. Back in Unreal Engine 4, it was early side of Unreal Engine 4. There were a lot of things that you couldn't do um, that Blueprint would only take you so far, and you would have to get into C++. It was still really far that it would take you, but eventually you'd have to get into C++. In Unreal Engine 5, if you don't want to touch C++, you don't have to as a solo developer. I have a friend who is completely solo developing a game right now called Nightborn, and he is like, it's gonna be released on Steam uh, Q3 of this year, I think, and all Blueprint. And it's all performant too, because the thing is Blueprint is the thing with Blueprint is like it is slower than C++, plus plus. But when you build the game, when you do a build, you compile and build the game to distribute, it actually nativizes that blueprint down into C++. plus plus. Now, it's not readable C++, plus plus, but you don't care because it's just the engine itself that's, that has to read it, not you. So, like binary code, all that, whatever. But it will, when you build it, it does nativize that blueprint down to C++. So you don't have to worry about performance wise. Now, what you can do with Blueprint is like 98% of what you can do with the engine. And the only thing that you really need to get into the C++ for would be if you wanted to use the gameplay ability system, which I do recommend. I do recommend gameplay ability system, but you don't necessarily have to get into the C++ yourself for that. You can get, there are a couple of plugins that are really good that expose the C++ side of the gas system to JSON, as well as one that just makes it blueprint available. The only issue with it is that you actually have to like compile it. But if you have an engineer friend that you can ask them to just like compile to distributable binary for you, then you can still get around that. But aside from using gameplay ability system, uh, if you didn't want to use one of the plugins that allows you to use it without C++, then there's not really any need for it. If you want to get into C++, then absolutely. But at this point, Blueprint has become so powerful that as a solo dev, if you're worried about when you have to get into C++, I say don't worry. Like don't even think about the C++ because you're probably not going to need it.
Yeah. Um, okay, just to make sure that we are still sticking to the time, just gonna try and breeze through a few more of these questions before we get to the demo. Um, okay, this is Amy. Am I getting your name right? I just finished my Vertex class. I was one of those students who had never opened Unreal before, and also had no coding experience whatsoever. But by the end of 9 weeks, I was able to create a little horror game and upload it to itch.io. Oh, that's fantastic. That's
That
great.
is awesome. That is awesome.
Uh, moving forward from Lewis, can optimization can be done with blueprints? I heard that a lot when using blueprints. Debugging is quite clunky, and also there is a lot of redundant code. Thanks for the chance to ask these kind of questions.
Yeah, so optimization can be done in blueprints, yes. That's a thing. That was like I've had that as a main job role before. Debugging in blueprints can be quite clunky. Not really. You just have to learn how to use the debugger. It's actually a lot easier to do it in there because you're just placing a breakpoint wherever you want it to be. But if you actually know anything about debugging, on the like programmer style debugging, then you can do that in Blueprint just fine. It's just visual. The thing with Blueprint that a lot of people don't get is that Blueprint is really just a visual version of C++. plus plus. It's the way that I like to do Blueprint and the way that I personally teach Blueprint is in an object-oriented method. So it's the same principles and foundations you would use in any kind of other programming language like C++, plus plus, C Sharp, anything like that. You can do that with Blueprint, and you should do that with Blueprint. The idea of clunky and redundant code in Blueprint comes from people who don't know their programming fundamentals. But if you know those fundamentals, which are not that hard, I literally teach it in like 30 minutes. Um, but if you know those fundamentals and you can apply them, then suddenly your blueprint code is not clunky and redundant anymore because you're doing it the proper way.
I mean, that's just kind of highlighting like getting your fundamentals for majority of the things really solves
Hmm.
some of the bigger problems that people can face.
Yes.
Uh, Next one is I always feel like I learn nothing because when I follow a course, I understand what I'm doing, but then I am on my own and I have no idea how to do things and always have to go to tutorials or courses for everything. Maybe I'm not made for this or something is wrong with me. I wish I could do things on my own.
Oh, that is all right. So I'm glad that you asked this well, there's no question mark, but still
Yeah.
there's a question there. I'm glad that you bring this up because it makes it makes this more personal. So the answer to this question is a speech that I always give in these open day things anyway, about like my personal approach to teaching something like Blueprint. So this just makes it more personal. So normally I give it later on, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. So I kind of touched a little bit about the whole Lego pieces, building blocks, that sort of thing. So the my approach, my personal approach to teaching Blueprint and just game dev in general inside of Unreal is I don't like to just walk you through a tutorial step by step, hold your hand, and then just let go after that, because that's exactly what YouTube tutorials are. So a lot of the times what I see are people, they'll go through a YouTube tutorial, they'll go through it step by step, and they will build exactly what they teach you to build in that tutorial. But then they come out of it and they want to make a variant of that, they have no idea how. The only thing that they learned out of that tutorial was how to follow that tutorial step by step, and they didn't learn anything out of it. So that's why the what I do is like I go into the foundations, I go into the fundamentals, and like I said before, I like to teach you how to build the actual building blocks. So we learn the building blocks. And it's it might seem simple and boring at first because, you're not really building anything super crazy. But then you build upon those building blocks. So you learn how to build the different Lego pieces, and then you learn how to put those Lego pieces together, and then you learn how to put them together in a different way, and then a different way, and then a different way. And then you learn how to build another Lego piece. And then you learn how to add that Lego piece onto this and build these different things. And so what comes out of it, what I always say, like when I am satisfied with what I've been able to teach a student, is when a student can walk away and go find one of those random YouTube videos, go through that YouTube video, and then actually understand what's happening and be able to make their own variant because they get halfway through it and they're like, no, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. And then they're able to do that because they understand those building blocks. So that's why I teach the simple steps because the everything complex, anything complex is just made up of a bunch of smaller, simpler steps. So complexity, you just break it down, break it down, break it down, and then break it down further until they're the simple building blocks. And then you just build it up. So tutorials will teach you how to build things with Legos. And what I like to do is I like to teach you how to actually build the Legos themselves. Then you can put them together however you want to. So you think that you're not cut out for it? You know, not the case. I've heard that so many times, hundreds and hundreds of students I've had that I've heard those exact words for, maybe I'm not cut out for it. And then now some of those students that said those exact same words, they're seniors at studios. Some of them have started their own studios, released their own games, made a career out of it. Some of them have even gone on to teach at other schools what they learned. So you think you're not cut out for it now? Well, you know, give it a try. Give it a try. You will be at the end of it.
And also, just from one student to another, Stella, who wrote this message, I can understand struggling with stuff and then thinking you're not cut out for it, or maybe something's wrong with you. I can assure you, if you just, as uncomfortable as it may be in that moment when you're trying to figure something out, if you sit through it, take breaks if you have to. Nobody's saying don't take a break. Take a break, come back, and then still try to figure it out, ask questions. But if you go through that process, I can assure you at the end of that process, there will be something that clicks in your mind and you'll be like, oh, it was not me. There was nothing wrong with me. It just was like had to take like a moment to kind of understand what's happening and how am I supposed to solve a problem. So yeah, just be a bit nicer to yourself, please. Moving on to the next one. There are a lot of Unreal Engine tutorials on YouTube, but it's all over the place. I have tried some of them, but learning Blueprint is a bit confusing for me. Or for me, or people with limited to no budget, what is your go-to site or a channel I can watch for me to easily understand and absorb Unreal? I see you've already responded in
Yeah,
the
shameless
chat.
self-promotion there.
That's fine.
But to be helpful, like to shameless self-promotion with the intention of being helpful, because I believe me, I understand. I have tried to learn a lot from different tutorials. A lot of how I learn things is I have to go through like 10 different tutorials from 10 different people trying to teach the same thing in different ways, and then I clever monkey my way through the rest of it until I finally understand it. And then usually I'll go and I'll make my own tutorial on it that, actually makes sense to people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to go about it. The next one is I am totally new to game development. This is from Lewis. I'm totally new to game development and I'm taking the program from Vertex. My question is, how will the boot camp be different from the Unreal Engine part of the program?
Which program? Because there
Okay.
are
I
multiple programs of
I think he's
Vertex.
referring to like the 9-month course and then this boot camp. Lewis, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but because we have like a few um courses. Uh,
Okay, so yeah, the
yeah,
game
game dev.
development from Vertex. So, okay, so here's how this one is different. The game development program that you're going through already, that you're going through right now, is I am not involved with that one. So that is being done in a specific way. And is this boot camp a little redundant if you're already going through that? Maybe a little bit, because the general idea is that this boot camp, your next stepping stone after it would be the game development program that you're already in. Would it still be valuable for you to go through this one? Possibly, possibly yes, because I do things in a little bit of a different way, and you learn different things that I know aren't taught the same in the particular game development program that you're going through. So while it is technically a precursor to what you're already going through, there are some fundamental pieces that could be helpful for you in going through your game development program. So it's at this point, it's not required. You're already in step two of it, but you might, you might learn, some different approaches to things.
You could also consider that th this boot camp is more one for you guys to get more familiar with game dev, more familiar with Unreal, build something on your own so you get that experience, you have a better understanding. And it kind of also quite neatly ties into the longer program that Lewis was just talking about. Moving on to the next question. What's the best resource to understand Lumen or Ninite? This is from Alessandro. I would love some sort of checklist on what to check to have a optimized game, such as meshes having certain elements or avoid using other things. For example, my fab assets are not optimized, and I would love to know what to check before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anything you get off Fab is going to be just absolute terrible on optimization. I've had to do a lot of like really quick prototypes and demos, proof of concept stuff, where we have to grab a bunch of stuff from Fab. Also in virtual production, there's a lot of grabbing Fab assets all the time. And every time I have to go through and I have to optimize what I get off of the marketplace, and it's just a part of the process. So that's pretty common right there. So best resource to understand Lumen and Nanite. The biggest thing to understand is that they are a pair. They work best together. Lumen is going to be more performant if you're using Nanite. Nanite is going to be more performant if you're using Lumen. Don't bring your stuff in directly from ZBrush, like the first marketing material said. I think that guy actually got fired that said that. But no, that's something that I can't give you a resource right now, but I can tell you that that is on my list of to-dos for a tutorial to create. And now that I have somebody sitting in front of me actually asking that question, that kind of tells me, hey, I should probably actually like record that video soon. Get that documentation together soon because it's really important and like there's a $150,000 a year job just doing that right there. Seriously, there's like um, tech artist optimization specialization that yeah, it's so yeah, I that you inspire me to actually work on one of my plans to get some information together, and I'll make sure that you are aware of it when it's out.
I'm gonna do just one more question and we'll get into the demo and we'll come right back to the questions after the demo. So this last question is from Brian. I read that I have to be very wary of the usage of the tick node. Is there an actual alternative to that node?
Yes, yes, there is actually. So, yes, you do need to be very wary of usage of tick. I actually recommend never using the tick node in Blueprint if you can avoid it. If you have to use tick for any reason, that's one of those 2% instances where you probably should do it in C++ because it's going to be much faster. But in terms of the alternative to using the tick node, yes, there is, and it's called event-based mechanics. A lot of things I've had people come to me with ideas on how to perform a certain mechanic, and they'll have it in tick and everything. And what I always do is I challenge them. It's like, okay, figure out how to do this without using tick. Because if you think you need to use tick for something, 9 times out of 10, you probably don't. There's probably a more event-based way to do it. So the important thing and one of the most important things with game dev in Unreal especially is learning how to approach things as event-based mechanics. Everything doesn't need to be in tick. You don't need to check for something every frame. For example, let's say you have a door, and when your character walks up to the door, you want to be able to trigger the message, hey, press E to open the door, you know? Well, you might think, okay, well, my door needs to be checking for the character to be there every frame. Or maybe my character every frame needs to be checking if I have something that I can interact with. No, no, you don't need to check every tick. That's where things like triggers come in, which we're actually going to look at here in a minute. And those triggers, it's like whenever you enter a trigger zone, that's when you do the check. That's when, and you only have to do it once. You don't even have to like integrate a tick right there. It's still just like one on. You enter a trigger, make it available. You exit the trigger, take it away. So the alternative is definitely just like really, really master the concept of event-based mechanics.
Now, I would like to go over the other questions, but before that, let's just hop into the demo if that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, okay, let's get started with the demo then, and we'll come back to the remaining questions after the demo. Guys, feel free to leave all your questions in the chat, and we'll answer them right after the demo. And
Okay.
quick note, if you guys do see the screen lagging, it's most likely Zoom because Zoom sometimes kind of struggles a little bit. Just
All
n
right.
not on all occasions, just sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. So are we ready for the screen share?
Yep.
All
Uh,
right. There we should. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Just making sure.
yeah, I can see it. Guys, if you can just let us know in the chat. Okay, cool. They can see your
All
screen.
right.
Great.
All right. Cool. So here is what we are going to do. So I've got Unreal open right here. And I'm guessing we probably have a mix of people who have never used Unreal before to people who are in the game development program already and are very familiar with Unreal already. So I want to make sure that there is an understanding. And this actually leads into what we were just talking about, the tick alternative, event-based mechanics. So it's going to be a fairly simple demo. I apologize for the people that, probably already know this stuff, but there is the concept of event-based things happening. So I've got just a third person project here. If I hit Alt P to drop in and play, you can see I can run around, things like that. Okay, so I like using third person projects personally because I just like third person games. But what we are going to do is we are going to create a simple idea of an event-based mechanic in here. So let me create a new folder in my content, and this will be I'll just call it mechanics for this demo. And I am going to start by creating a blueprint. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to go up to blueprint class, and we're going to call this an actor. And then I'm going to name it BP underscore, we'll call this, uh, I need a name for it. How about master interactable? There we go. And in this, what I'm going to show you is how to break things down into using what's called inheritance for a parent-child relationship here to be able to create multiple things that do the same thing. So this right here, my BP master interactable, there are two things that I'm going to need for this. The first one is going to be a static mesh. So over here in my components, I'm going to go to add. I'm just going to come down to static mesh. And I'm actually just going to name this mesh right there. Now you'll see that this is empty. And that is exactly what I want. I don't want anything to actually be in here because I'm going to change this on the child level. So from here, the next thing that I'm going to add, so I go up to my default scene root, I go to add, I'm going to add a trigger volume. So we do this with something called a box collision. So I just type in box and we see our box collision. And here we go. Now I have this square around it. Now this is the idea where the event-based mechanics come in. So here's what's going to happen. This trigger volume let me go ahead and hit compile, and I'm going to drag this out here. This trigger volume right here, whenever our player touches it, we're going to make something happen. Now, that can be literally anything. It could be a door opening, it could be a light turning on, it could be an animation being triggered, anything. But this trigger volume is the key to event-based mechanics. So with it selected here, I'm going to hit F2 so I can rename it, and I'm going to call it trigger. Then what I want to do is in my blueprint here, let's see, I think, yeah. So this little eyeball right here, I'm in 5.7. So if you're in 5.6 or 5.7, you'll have this UI. If you're in an earlier version, it's a different UI, but hopefully you're in the new ones. But this eye, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do show floor. And that's going to show me where the floor is for my 0.0.0. I'm going to take my trigger and I'm going to move it up a little bit. And it doesn't really quite line up. And that's because this box we see over here in the details, the box extent 32, 32, 32 doesn't really fit into the metric system very well. I don't know why they're still using this for these by default, but we can fix it. So I'm going to change this value to 50, 50, 50. Now, why am I doing that? Because I want a 1 meter trigger volume. So why 50? Why not 100? Well, that's because this value comes from the center outwards. So you essentially double whatever this is. Now that I have that, I'm going to move this up so it's sitting on the floor right there. And then now I come over here and we can see that there it is. So this here, I am going to move over here so I know where it's at. So it's going to be right in front of this right here. So we look at these stairs right here, and it's going to be right here at the bottom. Now, I'm not going to do anything else with this yet. I just want to check to make sure that this works. So this is where the breaking it down to the smaller steps and the building blocks comes in. I need to make sure that this trigger works. So how does it work? Well, whenever your character overlaps with it, we're able to do something. And whenever you leave, so when you enter, we can do something, but you can also do something when we leave. Now, if I go over here to my event graph, and there's some stuff in here already, we're not going to care about it. I'm going to right click, move this around. I go to my trigger and I right click it, and there is this add events. Now, there are two that are going to be the most important. There is on component begin overlap and on component end overlap. That's the enter and the exit. So we'll do begin, and then I'll right click again, go to add event, and we're going to add end. So this is the first part of the debugging side of it. Now, the on component begin overlap, I'm going to drag off of this and I'm going to type in the words print. And we're going to get this print string right here. Now, if anybody is familiar with web dev at all, then this is the same as doing a console.log, which anybody who's done web dev knows that console.log is like the greatest thing ever for debugging in web dev. And I believe the same thing here too. So this print string, what I will do, I'm going to go to this in string here and I'm going to say entered. And then I see this. Unfortunately, I'm familiar with web dev. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to control D, duplicate it down here, and we're going to pop this in over here, and I'm going to change entered to exited. Now, if I hit compile, I can come over here and I can drop in and play. And then I know it's basically right here, down this one. You see the entered and the exited popped up there. Didn't last for very long, which is terrible when you're trying to show people over video. So one thing you can do with this that a lot of people don't know about is you can click this little arrow right here to get some more options. And duration, well, this is where you can set how many seconds you want this thing to be on screen. So I like to set it to 10 seconds so that I can come in here, I can drop in and play, I can walk into this thing, and now we see up there in the upper left, it says entered, and I leave it, and we can see it says exited. So I know that this works. This trigger works. So if I'm building stuff down the line, like I have confirmed that the trigger works at this point. If I'm building stuff down the line and it's broken and it's not working, I can reasonably assume that it is not broken at this step because we've already determined that this actually works. Okay, so now what I am going to do is I am going to come down here and create the event that will be the thing that makes something happen. So I will right click and I'm going to type in custom and we're going to add a custom event and I'm going to name this um, on entered and then I'm going to right click and I'm going to create another custom event and we're going to call this on exited. Now, up here on component begin overlap, I'm just going to call on entered. Now, you might be asking the question, if you have an idea of where I'm going with this, we'll do on exited here, then you might be asking the question, why not just use these directly in the children? And that's because what we're learning how to do here is we're learning how to decouple master level stuff from children and control it with something else. So by on entered and on exited, these guys right here, they are going to be empty for now. They just simply exist. So we're going to compile and we're going to save that. And what I'll do is come down here and we're going to save everything real fast. But I am going to right click on this and I'm going to go all the way up to this one right here. This one, create child blueprint class. We're going to do this and I'm going to change the name of this. So BP, I'm going to take out the master and we're going to do interactable underscore. I'm going to change the child to, um, we're going to say light. So very simple like that. Okay. And then I double click to open this up. And what do I have here? This is a child of this BP Master Interactable. So I look over here and I see parent class, BP Master Interactable. If we click this little pencil icon, it'll actually take us to that. But what we have here is we have all of this stuff in our master, and now in our child, we can see it has the mesh and it has the trigger already. So what I can do is I can come in here and let's see, what do I want this mesh to be? I don't have any starter content in here, I believe. So we're just gonna grab, I'm gonna grab this SM cylinder. Okay, there we go. That works for me right there. So now I look at this and I see that, well, my trigger volume is kind of taken up mostly by this thing, but that's okay. That's okay. We don't want to increase the size of our trigger volume in our master right here, and I'm going to tell you why. because we set up our master to be something that is a scalable unit. We've set it to 1 meter, so 100 centimeters, which means I can very easily come in here and be like, okay, so my trigger volume, let's say I want it to be, um, come 1 meter out on each side. Well, let me lock my scale, and I'm just going to scale this up a little. Let's see, we'll do 2. All right, that is, let's do 4. How about that? Okay, that'll be how close we need to get to it. However, I don't want it to be on top of it, so I'm just going to unlock this and bring my scale back down to 1 on this. So there we go. And that right there. Okay, so now compile that. If I bring this thing out into my world right here, I can see I've got this box around it. Now, whenever I enter into this box, I want something to happen. So what I'm going to do with this one, I called it light. All right, so we need to actually add a light to this that we can control. So I'm going to go up here to my components. I'm going to add, and we're going to add a point light. And then I just move this up in here. We're going to come over here to the details. I see the intensity units by default when you add it to a blueprint is going to be, um, it's going to be unitless, which I don't like because if you bring a point light out into the world and look at the details, you see the intensity units is candelas. So it does make things confusing. So I like to keep everything universal. So we'll go with candelas in this project. So first thing I do is I always change my intensity units to candelas here. And you'll see 5,000 unitless is 8 candelas. But we're going to make this something like 40. I want it to be pretty bright. And then I'm going to change my color to something that's a little more like a neon fuchsia up in there. Okay. So we got that. So I compile, I look out here, and we can see that this is it is on. So that's what it's going to look like when it's on. It's obvious even in daytime. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to set our intensity to 40 because that's what it's going to be. And then in the event graph, we're going to set up some stuff. So we're going to create a custom event. So right click and type custom, and I'm going to call this light on. And then we'll create another one, custom event, and we'll call it light off. And all we're going to do with this is for light on, we're going to bring our point light out, drag off, set intensity, and we're going to set this to 40. And then I'll just drag, select these, Control D down here, and light off. We're going to set intensity to 0. Now, the first thing that we want to do after we have these is we want the light to be off by default. So we could come in here and we could set our intensity to 0, but I don't actually want to do that. And there's a reason why. It's because I want to be able to know what this is going to look like as I am level designing. So in that, as we're level designing, I'm going to leave it at that. So how do we have it start the game with light off? Well, we have two functions here, light on and light off. We just go to find our begin play, and we are going to call our light off right here. So this is going to be now. It's on while I'm designing, but when I play, first thing it does on begin play is light off. Now I walk up to it and nothing happens. Well, that is because we're not telling it to do anything yet. So we have our trigger. and it already has its overlap stuff in the master. And one of the things that it does is it calls this on entered and on exited. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called overwriting these in our child. So we'll come over here and we see it doesn't show up in this. So what we can do is we're going to go down to functions, or not, oops, didn't mean I clicked the wrong thing, not the plus. No, come on. No, there we go. We go to this override, which is right next to the plus. We click on this and we're going to see right here on entered and on exited. And what does it say next to them? It says BP master interactable. That means it is found on our master parent here, rather than on the actor itself. So I can just grab these and I'll grab the on exited as well. And now we can control these. So we have our on entered and on exited. Notice how it says event on entered and event on exited. If we come over here, we can see that we just named them on entered, on exited. But if we go up to the to these, it's very similar to this. So basically, these custom events, we are just calling onto them whenever we add them like this. But now, on entered, I'm going to do my light on, and on exited, I'm going to do my light off. And these are just very simple things. So light on, I double click it. Here it is. Just sets the intensity. Light off, sets it to 0. So I can compile and do that right there. And I drop in here, I play, I walk up to it. Now it turns on, I walk away, turns off. Now it turns on, I walk away, it turns off. Maybe I want to have a little bit of a delay before it turns off. Well, that's easy enough to do. I can come in here and light off node. I'm going to drag off. I'm going to type in delay, and I'm going to give it a 2-second delay. And we're going to hit compile. And we're going to run in over here. And now I come up to it, it turns on, I run away. It waits 2 seconds before it turns off. Now, of course, you can actually set this to be a parameter. You could set this to animate. We don't have time for that today, but you can do all kinds of things to make this fancy. Now, the important thing that I want to do is I want to show you how we can take this master interactable here, and we're going to right click and we're going to create another child blueprint real fast. We're going to do BP, and I'm going to take the master out of it. I think, here we go. BP interactable child, and we are going to call this, I'm going to call it a collectible. How about that? All right, so this here, this collectible, I double click it, I open it, and what do I get? I get the same thing that we started with here in this one, just without the extra stuff. Because it starts with this base right here. Well, now what I want to do is I want this to be an item that you could, when you run into it, you're going to collect it. Now, the only logic we're going to add today is just destroy it so it disappears because we're on a time crunch. But you'll get the idea of where it goes. So what do we need to do? Well, my trigger, at this point, I don't actually want it to be uh, on the ground like this. I want it to actually be centered on the object. So I'm going to reset my location to 0. So it's centered like that. We're going to leave the scale at 1 because you have to get right up to it. And then I'm going to go to my mesh and we're going to go to the static mesh here. We're going to find a sphere. Where are the spheres? Why is there no sphere by default in Okay, 5.7, you're failing me. That's okay. We'll just use a chamfer cube. How about that? And then I'm going to make my chamfer cube be about zero point 0.5. There we go. We'll drag this guy out here into the world, and we're going to drag a couple more out here like that. And then what we'll do is we are going to come into our event graph and we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to go to our override. We're going to add the on entered. We're going to add, well, actually, we don't need the on exited because we're just going to, when we run into it, we're going to get rid of it. So, what I will do now is I will drag off of this and we are going to type in destroy. And I'm going to grab this destroy actor right here. Now, if I compile and I come in and play, we're going to run over here. Okay, so this, we're going to be on, and it goes off. We're going to collect, collect, collect. So very simple right there. We're just destroying the actor. But here's the thing. Both of these, this light right here that can gets turned on when you get close to it, and this collectible, they are the same mechanic. This is what I was talking about before, where you'll have people they'll come up with like 10 different mechanics and then really they're the same mechanic, or at least they're the same master mechanic. Yeah, we're doing some different logic on this. We're turning a light on versus you know, collecting this. We'll probably add it to an inventory, that sort of thing. But they're ultimately the same mechanic because at the core, at their master level, because they are a collection, or not a collection thing, but an interactable. Now, these are event-based mechanics. This is where I know the way that they used to teach Unity back in like 2006 was that, okay, you always on your game update, you're ticking every tick, every frame, you need to be checking to see if you overlap with one of these. No, you don't do that with Unreal. With Unreal, you use event-based mechanics, and this is what event-based mechanics are. What's the event? The event is that we run into this trigger. When we do that, we make something happen. But until we do that, we don't care if this even exists at all. Okay, so now one other thing that I'm going to show you, and this is going to go a little bit faster just for the sake of showing you how this elevates to the next level, is we are going to go here, master interactable. I'm going to right click, create child blueprint. This is going to be BP interactable uh, underscore power up, we'll call it. I'm going to do a very similar thing right here. We're going to go to trigger. I'm going to reset this here. I'm going to make my static mesh be a chamfer cube. Let's see. For this, not gonna change the thing here. We'll make this zero point 0.5, uh, and then I'm going to add a uh, rotating movement right here, where my rotation scale is actually going to be 90. So this thing is actually going to be rotating out in the world. I'm going to drag it over here. We're going to bring it up and drop it in play. Now remember, this is not follow along. This is just showing you that like same mechanics and all that. Okay, cool. This works right here. Got it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my mesh has no collision. So collision presets, we're going to be no collision right there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my event graph and I am going to do my override on entered. Uh, First thing I'm going to do on entered is my mesh component. I'm going to drag this out here. I'm going to destroy the component, not the actor yet, because I do still need the actor. And then what I'm going to do is we are going to, I actually need to have access to my player. So what I'll do is I'll go back to my master here. And in my event graph, what I'll do is on component begin overlap, I'm going to drag out other actor. I'm going to promote it to variable. We're going to connect this right here. I'm going to take other actor. We're going to rename it to my player. Um, and then now we have an actual variable called my player that stores the player when we overlap with it. Then I want to go to, where is it? My third person, I think my blueprints, my character. Um, like I said, don't try to follow along here. Like I said, this is just a demonstration of like where we can take this as a same kind of mechanic. What I'm going to do on here is we're going to do add a custom event. I'm going to call it change color. And what I need is, what is my mesh right here? We have this. We're going to go here. I'm going to make a duplicate of this. And we're going to apply that duplicate there. I'm going to open this up. And we're going to, let's see, base color, paint tint. So it already has a thing on there called paint tint. So I am going to change color. Okay, on mesh, we'll do this. We're going to set vector parameter value on materials. And we're going to make you, let's see, paint tint. I actually have to make sure that this is exact real fast. Where is it? Paint tent. Okay, so it does have a space in there. Okay, good. Now we're gonna do a I want a two vector linear color, and we're gonna make linear color. Actually, no, I can just do it and promote it to a variable. There we go. So power color. We'll do that so I can set this, and this is going to be, we're going to make her blue. There we go. So change color. All right. And then I come back to my power up here, and after I destroy component, I'm going to grab the my player, right click, my player, get my player, and we're going to cast to BP third person character. I would not normally do it this way. I'm just demoing for time crunch here. I would normally set this up as an interface, but for cast here, we're going to do the change color, and there we go. And then after that, we will uh, destroy actor. I will compile, and then now I drop it in play. I come over here, and now we're blue when we collect that power up. So that, like I said, don't follow along with this one. That was just really quick, like, hey, let's throw something together really quickly that's going to do something more than what we're doing here. The important thing that we're learning with this is we're learning about those building blocks and then how to put them together in different ways. So we're taking the idea of inheritance and we're starting with a master, and we think about these different things and what they all have in common. What do all of these things have in common between the turning the light on, this little collectible, and the power up? Well, they all have a mesh, and then they all have a trigger volume that, causes an event to happen. And then from there, we just tweak the individual stuff with them to give them all of its custom things. But that just a quick little like super rush through, showing off some of the being able to build with inheritance like that and the concept behind the event-based mechanics. So I do see a couple of questions in here that I'll answer real quick. If you adjust parent parameters, does each child inherit the transform data as well? Yes. Yes, they do. So anything you set on the parent, the child will inherit by default, but usually you can change on the child, which you saw between the light, where you saw how I changed the size of this, but also I kept the position the same. But in my collectibles, I moved the position of the trigger volume here. Same goes with variables. It'll automatically inherit from the parent, but then you can change it on the child wherever you need to. Okay. Next question was, where would you say is the line where you need a new child versus an instance with different variables? That is a much longer conversation. Um, Usually, it's good to have a child when it's going to be a specific thing and a specific where you might change the instance would be when you have variations of that thing. So for example, we look at the collectible here. So this collectible is going to be different from the light because it's doing a different thing. But this here, we might have instances of this where the collectibles are a vase versus a statue versus a coin, something like that. But then we come over here to power up, and that's where that line gets a little blurry because technically we're kind of doing the same thing with the power up as we are the collectible. The difference being that the collectibles, they're probably going to go to some sort of inventory or some sort of currency, wallet that you have, whereas the power up is going to actually change something, power up your character in some way. So because they are, even though mechanically they're almost exactly the same all the way up till their last step, this could be an instance. I would still personally make it a different child just to organize that purpose a little bit better. Let's see, so is each child just inheriting the overlap trigger event from the parent? So you're basically duplicating an event, but giving it different outcomes per child. Yes. Yeah, pretty much. That's what's happening there. It's different outcomes per child, but you saw when we actually had to start enhancing it, how having this event that you call becomes better than trying to override this every time. Because now we are setting the actual player on the override, and we don't have to worry about having to do that every single time again and again, over and over again on the children because it's already handled before we get to that overwritable thing. Let's say, thank you for sharing. Blueprint reviews on YouTube. I'm sure there are. Yeah, we'll find some good examples for you on the simple versus advanced. Let's see. See if there's a question. How does Unreal handle handling a game server and syncing multiple instances of blueprints? That's with a thing called replication. Let me actually show you this right here. I click on this variable. Over here in the details panel, you'll see this right here. This thing that says replication. This is what controls all of that. And then you can have things happen on the server versus on the client. That's a much bigger conversation there. But basically, this replication allows something to operate on the server and then spit that info out to the clients. Yeah, the blueprints are super similar to the node-based game builder garage. Yes, yes, they are. Your kid definitely is going to be primed for getting into Unreal.
There's also a few more, like I just scrolled up. So this one is, why would you move the trigger box up and not the mesh? When the box is just the child, won't the child follow the parent?
So that's all how you lay it out. So this right here, I have my mesh and my trigger are children of the default scene root, and one is not a child of the other. I like to keep those separate because I might want to do different different things with them. Let's
Uh,
see. I don't see any others. I don't know if I missed any.
uh, I actually see a few more. Just gonna breeze through them quickly. We might go overboard by just a few minutes. Thanks for your patience, guys. Uh, okay, so, oh, someone's asking what guitar is behind you. Uh,
That is that's Les Paul. It's my Les Paul over there. I
uh,
haven't played it in a few months though.
the next one, sorry if I'm like I'm just trying to cover as many questions as possible. How how are the classes going to work? Will it be live sessions or pre-recorded? And for people that work and can't attend classes, will there be a chance to ask you questions and have feedback with what we are doing? The answer to that is yes, it's both live and also recorded. Um, and I'm quite certain, John, they can reach out to you over Discord as well to ask their
Yes.
questions.
Yeah. That is I will say that that is actually the most important part of something like this is the live aspect and the ability to ask questions. I will tell you, I have tons of pre-recorded content myself that I even sell individually. But what's valuable in something like this boot camp is that you have the access to me, to others, and you have the opportunity to ask questions. You get real-time feedback, real-time help and assistance with your specific individual projects. That's the most valuable part of it.
There's another one. Your background in using Unreal in trucking companies and Walmart store planning is not what most people think of in terms of a linear approach to the industry. My background is in animation, 2D and 3D. I also have a non-linear employment background. If we have time, can you give a short overview of how you first entered the game industry? Was it the proficiency in Unreal Engine?
Uh, No, so my first entered with my proficiency in 3D modeling and texturing, actually, way back in the early 2000s. So that was I actually entered as a 3D modeler, as an environment artist, and as I worked my way up, just found myself getting more and more into the technical side of things, and kind of became a technical artist, and I think that's the logical progression for most artists. I would say, like, especially on the environment artist side, I would usually say that probably like 7 out of 10 end up growing into tech artists, and like 3 out of 10 end up growing into like principal environment artists. Same on the character side. I see a lot of character artists that over the course of their careers just become tech artists versus, getting it, becoming like a principal character artist.
Uh, there's another one. Can these boot camps be participated in only at night or evening or weekends? Um, there is like a set day and time when the live sessions occur, and all the live sessions are recorded. And if you miss it, you can always go watch the recording. And as mentioned, if you guys have questions, you can always reach out to all the mentors, including John, over Discord. And majority of the time, from my personal experience, I've noticed the mentors respond fairly quickly. And you will also have peers who will help you with all your questions as well.
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, and absolutely. It's the there are the set date and times, and I'm sure there's going to be future ones that are going to be at different dates and times. But yeah, me personally, like you can always get a hold of me and ask me questions over Discord and stuff. I very often pop into like labs on Discord and stuff. I was to give you an example, I was almost late to this one because I wasn't watching the clock. I was in a session with two other students. Just like random Discord lab session that was like they had a question. And I was like, hey, let's just get on video and let's walk through this. And I was almost late to this because of that. So I was like, I'm always doing that.
So, guys, just to quickly mention, apart from the live sessions for the specific boot camp, there are also like weekly lab sessions where we have other mentors as well who teach lab sessions. It's open to everybody. So you guys can always attend your course's live session, and then you can the next day you can hop onto the lab session, ask all your questions, and you will get answers to that. And you can learn a lot in the lab sessions as well. I would highly recommend that you guys check out the lab sessions once you join the course. Uh, Moving on, not sure if this is relevant to the topic, but with tons of studios requiring applicants to have years of Unreal Engine experience, how can we convince or even make them consider people like me that have very minimal knowledge or that might only have just a personal boot camp experience?
Show them your value. It so you can have somebody who only has like 6 months of boot camp experience, and you can have somebody that has 10 years of actual work experience. And whoever actually shows the most value is going to be the one that gets that job. Um, Obviously, it becomes easier when you have actual work experience, but like I have been on the hiring side of things quite a lot at different studios, and there have been times where I have hired somebody who it was their first industry job over somebody who had been in the industry for 5 years. And that is because that person showed more promise, they showed more value. Actually, as a junior, you end up having a little bit of an edge because you tend to be hungrier, especially if it's like you're trying to break in. Like the things that juniors will do to break into the industry, I know companies like to take advantage of, which is not a good thing, let me tell you. And I have never personally done that when I've been managing. But I do recognize the hunger that somebody trying to break in has versus somebody who's been in the industry for a while and, you know, has become complacent or jaded. So it's like you show the value. Show one of the biggest tricks, one of the biggest secrets that I can tell you for that is show your progression because you can have somebody who has 5 years of experience and you know, their portfolio pretty much looks the same. They know exactly what you know, hiring managers know exactly what they can do. But then you have somebody who is new, they're a junior, and then, you know, they're like, okay, this is my portfolio piece that's not that great. And then 3 months later, here's the next portfolio piece that is exponentially better. Maybe it's not to the level of that senior yet, but it's exponentially better. What you're showing is how much growth you can have in 3 months, and what that is going to tell somebody who is, you know, looking at portfolios and, you know, hiring managers and stuff like that. What that's going to tell them is that, oh, hey, you're hungry, you're growing fast, you're getting better, you're like on that rapid trajectory, and they're going to see that and they're going to be like, okay, we can hire you as a junior, and you know, in 6 months you're going to be at the senior guy's level. That's going to be more valuable to them because they know you can get there. And they also know that they can mold you a little bit in the way that they, you know, their pipelines and things work. So show your growth. Blogs, devlogs, show your process. That's one thing that seniors don't do. Seniors, and I'm guilty of this myself in my portfolio. Seniors are just going to show the pretty pictures and they're going to show the beauty renders of their personal projects if they even have them. And for their professional projects, they're just going to show screenshots of a TV show or a game and just say, hey, you know, I was an environment artist on this, or I was the lighter on this, and not go into any detail, not break anything down. That's, but when you're showing your process, showing your work, the idea is give you you answer all of their questions before they have a chance to ask them in an interview. You answer the questions with your portfolio. If you get to your interview process and they're stumped at what to even ask you technically because your portfolio shows it all, or they ask you a question and you're like, "Hey, look at this particular portfolio project and I detail it out here." That's what's going to get you in right there. So show your work. Show progress, show the fact that you can grow quickly and show your work, and that's going to prove way more value.
Just a few more questions, and we are almost done. Notice that particle system has been depreciated. Is it all just Niagara now?
You can still use Cascade. It still works. And they don't have a plan to turn it off for the next few versions, I know. But yeah, Niagara has been the main thing for probably, at this point, like 5 years.
And then there's another one. I'm not sure if you answered this one. How does Unreal handle having a game server and syncing multiple instances of blueprints?
Yeah, that was the replication
Okay.
stuff. That's a
Uh,
much longer topic, much longer conversation, but it's
yeah.
basically replication.
The next one is my background is in 3D modeling, and I'm finding that to be the most oversaturated field in animation and games, what other niches might I approach that seem to be in high demand? Tech art, lighting, mocap?
Tech art. Tech art is
Yeah.
definitely one of the biggest ones. Lighting, you can do mocap if you want. All of those are good. So the thing with I understand and respect that your background is in 3D modeling. Fully appreciate that. But a lot of the jobs that are in demand right now, 3D modeling is just one of those like basic skills that is included in everybody. Every job in game dev, like people can 3D model. Like I've worked at studios where like most of the C++ engineers know how to do some basic modeling in Maya. Maybe not to the level that you are. I'm sure that your background's in 3D modeling, so you can probably do some amazing models. But 3D modeling as a keyword is just as basic of a skill as typing, as far as like hiring managers and recruiters and stuff are going to be concerned. So what you can do to emphasize your advanced abilities in 3D modeling is go down the tech art side and really find add how to enhance your 3D models. So you can make a really good 3D model. We'll use that 3D model as a base to show off your ability to make some really awesome shaders. Use that as a base to show off, some really awesome optimization pipelines, that sort of thing. So it's like then you're coming into it as a tech artist that has amazing 3D artist skills. So, like me, how I market myself, I never call myself a tech artist, even though those are the roles that a lot of the time I find myself in. So I always market myself as a technical environment artist. So I'm emphasizing my background in environment art. So I'm emphasizing the 3D modeling, the texturing, all of that, but I'm technical. And I'll even give this away. Like you can steal this if you want and become my competition when I'm applying for jobs. But one of the things I always put in my resume and my cover letters is I put the artist back in tech artist. So just find ways to go into that field, and tech art is probably the easiest for it there, and just really emphasize the 3D modeling aspect by showing what you can do with the 3D modeling.
There's another one. I work 9 to 5s and have a 10-year-old or 10-month
10 month
old
old.
and have deployments. Should I not participate? when you say deployment, I mean, are you are you serving in the army?
Uh,
Uh,
that's a tough question because a lot of the value of the boot camp comes from the live thing. I that might be worth a conversation. So maybe get set up with a conversation with Jean-Marc or something
yeah.
about a more custom tailored plan. So maybe you could have like the recordings from the boot camp and then like be able to have like custom scheduled one-on-ones or something. That's a possibility. It's usually it's not a common thing that gets done. Um, so it's not really something that like can be done for everyone, but I'm sure could probably come up with something there. Then you would have access to the recordings of the live classes that you could just watch those when you can, and then have like scheduled one-on-ones that would take the place of the lab time.
I've just posted like a email in the chat, guys. If you guys need like, tailored, a bit more like customized stuff customized to your requirements, just reach out to us on that email and just set up a call. It's a no strings attached, completely free call. It's just so that you can talk to us one on one because it's obviously a bit more tricky in like a group setting like this. So we would like to talk to you one on one to help you figure this out. Next one is, what's your Discord, John? I'd love to be able to shoot some questions over to you if possible.
I don't
Uh,
have an answer for that. I'll have to find it.
uh,
Oh, there it is.
okay, there's still quite a few more questions coming in. We are just, guys, for the sake of time, considering that we have overshot quite a bit, we'll do a few more questions. I mean, we'll try and answer as many as possible in the from the chat, and then uh, you can always like send us more questions on that email that I've just shared. Okay, next one. Is it because seniors feel like they don't need to prove their worth like a junior needs to when it comes to portfolios? I think you did answer
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, with a thumbs up. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
exactly it.
What mistakes do beginners make that cost them 6 to 12 months of progress?
We could talk for like 20 minutes on that one, but I will say the two biggest ones are, which kind of are the same thing, and I'm actually dealing with that with another student this morning. Um, Getting married to your work and not being willing to iterate. One of the hardest lessons that I was ever given by Ryan Kingsline himself, the father of Vertex here, was that I had to learn how to kill my darlings. That really is like the biggest thing that you've got to learn, and you'll be better for it. But it's not being getting too married to your work and too close to it, and not being willing to iterate on it is the biggest mistake. Or not being able to fail fast and throw away a bad idea. That's the one that hurt me like in my soul, but it's also helped me more than anything else.
Yeah, just not being too emotionally attached to the stuff you create.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to have to discard it no matter how good you at a personal level might think it is, or at least put it to the side until you improve. Next one is, how good is Unreal for developing 2D Metro, Metroid,
Metroidvanias.
yeah,
Uh,
Metroidvania, sorry.
so one of my game dev boot camps that I did, that was one of my 8 week ones. I had somebody who had never used Unreal before create one in 8 weeks. So hopefully that answers your question.
What really does technical art, what really does a technical artist, and what do you have to do to study to become a technical artist?
Uh,
I
tech art is probably the most vague umbrella there is because there are like 20 different types of tech artists. So it just really depends upon what your secondary discipline is. So like you can be a tech artist focused on environments. You can be a tech artist focused mostly on like shaders and optimization, rigging and characters. So it's really just taking a discipline, whatever your main discipline is, and like going down the technical side of it. A lot of it comes down to optimization. A lot of it comes down to just doing really, really cool things that you can't do with just modeling.
Um, and just are there any more successful placement rates of these programs and boot camps? That's something for the admissions team to answer, I would say. Uh, I
I would
don't
say
have a
so too, but I will say that like I mean uh I've taught some classes in Vertex that has sent people off to have some pretty lucrative careers. Obviously, the game industry right now is not in a good position, but when it is in its good position, I've sent people like I sent somebody out of a 16-week game art boot camp like 4 years ago that is now like a principal environment artist at a studio here in San Diego. Like it's just they're you get taught the right things. We'll put it that way. I also had one student that like he was a hard student. Like he struggled in the beginning. And this was about 4 years ago. He struggled really hard in the beginning, and it was rough for him. But he didn't give up, and so we didn't give up on him. And he just last week sent me a message telling me about the studio that he started and their game that is releasing on Steam later this year. So,
That's great. I mean, I'm also aware of a few students who we helped them kind of navigate their way through interviews and they have landed internships and some of them have even landed jobs in studios. So, yeah. Besides everything you've mentioned, do you have suggestions for cozy game artists?
Uh, suggest well, it de depends on what you're going after. So okay, so cozy game artist, yes, yes, because this fits into the concept of stylized, and I just had this conversation with somebody yesterday, and I feel like I have this conversation like at least once a month with somebody. But so cozy games tend to be a little bit more stylized, right? And so a lot of people go into stylized art thinking, hey, I got to go heavy into stylized, I got to ignore realism, go into stylized, focus on stylized, start from the ground up with stylized, and that is the wrong approach. So the important thing to always remember is that in order to master stylized art, like a lot of cozy games are, you have to master realism first. Why? Because stylized art is just exaggerated realism. So you cannot master stylized art until you've mastered realism first. Because in order to master stylized, you have to understand how to exaggerate on realism in the correct ways. So hopefully that fits into your question there.
Guys, just quickly, I've also posted a link that has a lot more details about the boot camp. So feel free to check that link out and you can enroll through that link as well. And if you do enroll by tomorrow, 10 p.m. Pacific time, then you do get like 30% off. Just covering the last few questions that I see. How does the curriculum adapt for students who want
Uh,
to create indie? Uh, oh, you just answered. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a longer conversation that we can have here. This is the but we do that with our term four is basically creating an indie studio. I actually have my own business called Indie Game Labs that is all about like helping small groups like build their indie studio and everything. It gets you there. It gets you there. It probably gets you there easier than it gets you to AAA, to be honest.
What are some other big companies or industries that use Unreal Engine that you can think of outside gaming?
Virtual production and film, lots of simulation stuff. The military. I have so many military contracts that I can't talk about on my resume. Um, yeah, I would say those. There's NASA, simulation for Mars rovers, being able to actually control robots. I actually built an interface for controlling retail shelf scanning robot through Unreal that you can drive with Unreal. It when I said that the limitations are, or not the limitation, when I said the possibilities are limitless earlier, that Unreal's like a dream machine, you really can use it for a lot of things. There are a lot of companies like outside of gaming that are using it, and outside of film as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would also throw in fashion in there because I personally have worked, one of my previous jobs was working at a company who was doing like 3D models and like creating all of their products in 3D. So a lot of our clients were like Louis Vuitton, Bulgari, Nike, like
Mm.
big name companies. So
Yeah.
fashion is another big industry. How
Ar
often do the,
architecture
yeah,
architecture as
sorry.
well. I actually just spent
Yeah.
a I spent a recently spent a week in New York teaching a bunch of architects how to use Unreal and how to use VCam and everything, and it was like huge event.
So yeah, basically, it's like a very huge, like you open a lot of doors if you do learn it. How often do the boot camps run? Um, how often? I mean, we do try, from how I understand it, we do run it at least. I mean, it depends on which all the boot camps. This one, I'm not quite sure. I don't have the answer. Again, that's for the admissions team. Because majority of the time when we run these sorts of boot camps, it usually does well enough that we have recurring demand, so we keep trying to put it out as often as possible. Uh, Next one is sometimes we ask questions to establish trust and transparency. Thank you for addressing all my inquiries. As a dabbler who's looking to start and build something creative, projects, but would love to change careers. I've recently been laid off, unfortunately, not performance related, purely restructural issues. Being a full stack dev is also not at all, it is also not all it's cracked to be now. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, I hear you there. I trust me, I understand that. That's something that the economy is not in a good place right now. It's just for a lot of people, a lot of industries. There's the homelessness, the unemployment, all that is really bad across the entire nation right now. But it's also a really good time to start getting into potentially like the indie side of things. And it's just, um, yeah, definitely hear you there. I definitely empathize with you on that. But could be a good endeavor. You'll learn some good things.
uh, and the last one is in your demo reel showcasing what you know in Unreal, would it be better to create your own assets, textures, or you can utilize pre-made stuff to show what you can do with it?
Depends upon what you're trying to show. If you're trying to show your ability as a 3D artist, then you should be modeling and texturing your own assets. If you're trying to show off uh, game development or level design, then don't waste your time trying to create your own assets and textures. Show those things. If you're trying to do animation, then absolutely get a really good character off of the marketplace and just animate the crap out of it, and not just walk cycles. But if you're trying to show off as a 3D artist, make your own assets. But if you're not trying to do that, then make your own assets if you have time, but otherwise, really focus your time on trying to show off the thing that you're trying to show off.
And just the last question for this event. As a professional 3D gameplay animator, does this help me at all in game development?
Let me see that. So, as a professional 3D gameplay animator, does this help me at all in game development? Yes, because it is all about game development. So, um, if you were like, especially if you are trying to really like advance your career as an animator specifically, then um, it can be really good to help you build some portfolio pieces that can showcase your animations. Because yeah, you can show off a bunch of animations that you've made, but when you're trying to create a simple game, it can sometimes give you ideas for animations that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's a bonus point. But also, it can show your animations in context. So, for example, if you wanted to be like the type of animator that really does like fancy combat animations and stuff like that, the best way to show that off would be with an actual combat system in gameplay. And then actually show how and this leads you a little bit it'll lead you a little bit towards the more technical side as well. So you can be considered a tech artist on top of an animator. You'd be a technical animator, it's called, that shows your animations in in action where they would actually be used, but you also know how to do it, so you know all of the little nuances of things. You know that because you can make a really fancy, fully animated sequence and show that in a demo reel, and that's really cool because it shows that you can, animate. But being able to show that you know where to cut your animations, to modularize your animations, where to string them together, how to blend bottom and top body animations together, showing you know how to do that, is going to look attractive to employers, but it's also going to make you a better animator.
Um, and also, guys, once again, I've posted the link for you guys to check out the boot camp, and I've also posted the email that you can reach out to us. Do you get anything authentic for finishing courses or boot camps, just certificate or something that you can add to LinkedIn? Yes, you do. You'll have to just reach out to us and let us know that you want one, and we'll give you like a certificate of completion of the course. Uh, and this is okay. So John is responding to someone else. Okay. Cool. That is all the questions for today then. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. John, thank you so much for your time. It has been an incredibly valuable session. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I hope to see you guys in class.
Yeah. Hope to see you guys too.
Okay, thank you, guys. We'll be sharing the recording through email. John, thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.